Senior Counsel Martin Daly knows very well that a state of emergency is a strong weapon in government arsenal in tackling crime. Martin, welcome to the show. Tell me something. Do you know the objectives of the state of emergency? You're a learned man.
Well, no, that is what I have been complaining about all day to anyone who would care to listen, and thank you for listening. You have to emphasize, as you have done, that the use of a state of emergency is the strongest weapon in the government's arsenal. So it must be that the state of emergency is intended to be used in an extreme situation. Let me say immediately that I am one of those who have been calling for a state of emergency for a long time. It should have been done midway through the last regime. But if you're going to implement a state of emergency, you must have objectives that rise above the normal objectives, so that finding 6 guns doesn't justify a state of emergency. Arresting 30 people somewhere in East Port of Spain on a raid doesn't justify a state of emergency.
I asked the Attorney General a short while ago about that very thing, and he described it as a resounding success. I thought he would have said, well, by tomorrow we'll have the big guns.
Well, I would prefer to put it a different way. Here's my complaint. I would have thought that by the time you decide to declare a state of emergency, you have a good idea where the stashes of guns are, and as soon as you declare the state of emergency, your teams move in, and in my graphic imagination, you find stashes of guns and you fill up big boxes with them, seal them, and drop them in the Gulf of Paria. And the other objective must be that the emergency regulations provide for detention orders. So I expected that I would have woken up the morning after the state of emergency declared to find that Nelson Island was full and there was a waiting list of people to get in. Because I would have expected Mr. Big, or all of the Mr. Bigs, to be on the list. And the reason you would use a state of emergency for that is the due process has been stymied for over 5 to 10 years. Due process has been stymied. And while I am very much in favor of due process normally, we have got to a stage where the country cannot take it anymore. And I think everybody is in favor of a state of emergency. In principle, they are concerned about how it will work and how it will affect them. So I believe that the opening gambits of this state of emergency have not met my expectations. I think the country is heading for a big disappointment because I have not seen any of these big objectives being accomplished.
Well, yes, maybe no. Suppose by tomorrow we find out that they've so strategized that by tomorrow or the next day they would have gotten some of the big guns.
Then, of course, I would say something different. But if you haven't done it within the first, 24 or 48 hours, I mean, these people do not become successful criminals by being stupid. They will have lots of plans about how to evade capture, what to do. I believe that some early warning was given of the state of emergency. Perhaps a few fast boats sped out of here. I have no idea. And I want to emphasize, that a state of emergency is not for holding 30 people in Nelson Street. It's for holding the people who are bringing in the stuff that they're dealing with in Nelson Street and who are financing the stuff. So I would expect when the boat is heading down to Nelson Island, you'd have a few jacket and tie fellas in there too.
Within hours of the state of emergency,
Absolutely.
People were BBMing all over the place where the hotspots are.
Well, all of that.
What are being targeted.
Yes, but and the other thing that I think is very disturbing is one or two of my friends who knew I was coming to do this said you must mention that the police observing the curfew because the streets are empty, but they're empty of police as well.
Well, I don't think that's entirely true.
Well,
Trinidad is good for a joke.
Good for a joke. But people are very confused. Then you had this misconception, which the government must take full responsibility for, whether the state of emergency was limited. So you had debates.
The Attorney General dismissed my question. The Prime Minister said it was a limited state of emergency. The country was on the impression that it was a limited state of emergency. Whatever that means in people's minds, he is saying that they made it very clear that it is a national state of emergency. Yes, we know the proclamation makes it clear it's a state of emergency, but that was not a signal given to the country.
Well, I not arbitrate in that fight, which I witnessed. But the point about it is the government said, let's not use the technical word, that it was a limited state of emergency. And you were hearing discussed on the media whether civil rights, normal fundamental rights had been suspended in Tobago as well as Samoa. People were very confused by the use of the term limited state of emergency. It led to a belief that the state of emergency really only truly applied or applied in its full force in the areas where there was a curfew. The government's communications have been awful. And to be driven now to saying that 6 arrests and or 6 guns and 30 arrests is a success of the state of emergency, but that's normal police work. A state of emergency is an extreme measure designed to get at much bigger fish and much bigger objectives. So I am very disappointed. And the reason why I'm, making such a fuss about this is the country wants this. The country cannot take another disappointment. And as I've been saying all day, if you play this ace and you don't hang jack, it's going to be impossible to play it again. And if we devalue the threat of a state of emergency, we devalue what a state of emergency is designed to accomplish, then we have taken a step backwards, not a step forward. Hence my disappointment.
What's your take on the police commissioner not being present at a time like this? The police commissioner detained in Brazil, he doesn't know he needed a visa. Stephen Williams acting in the position of police commissioner, the police service commission saying one thing, the attorney general producing a letter saying another. What's your take on all of that?
Well, all I know, I will say 2 things about that. The curfew order is signed by Stephen Williams, acting police commissioner, and I suppose you guys will investigate when that was done and what office he held. I don't want to get into that. And to be fair to the Attorney General, he handled you very well on the issue of not getting him to say anything prejudicial. But the bigger question is, was it known? Did they know where the police commissioner was? Did they declare the state of emergency knowing he was out of the country? It all suggests that it's a bit of slipshod work was going on here. Maybe it was so urgent to do it that they couldn't wait on the police commissioner's return. I mean, to be fair, in 1990, when the coup occurred, the substantive police commissioner was abroad and we had an acting police commissioner, and he had to do his best. He didn't do very well, but he had to do his best. So I think we mustn't blow that out of proportion. What is more of concern is how could it be that a state of emergency was being contemplated at a time when 2 of your top and another one of your top officials were abroad. That just seems odd. But maybe something drove it that we didn't know. But maybe we'll find out. But the whole thing looks all a bit slipshod.
Martin Daly, Senior Counsel, former head of the Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you for joining us. Sports news next, after the break.